even though from Southern California, I think originally, Willard and Dibs. But he joins us right now here on the Boxer and Gerson guest line. He was with the Chiefs 4 years ago. Did I get that about right, Mitchell? Did you grow up a Bay Area sports fan?
Yeah, we did. So my dad is from Santa Rosa, and so he got us on 49ers and the San Francisco Giants.
And so you're still a huge Niner fan?
I kind of lost all allegiance a while ago. These days I got to stick with my Chiefs, but the Niners probably would be second if I had to.
I'm sorry, but your phone cut out right there. Mark said something about you still being a Niner fan, and I heard you say, yeah. Is that right, Mitchell?
I mean, they're up there. They're below, a couple of team allegiances that I've played for. But, my dad's still a 49ers fan, my uncle, and no other 49ers fan. So, still loyal to the Chiefs, but I have enough 49ers fans in my life.
Fair enough. Mitchell Schwartz joining us here on Willard and Dibs. Mitchell, how would you compare the 49er team you beat 4 years ago and this one?
I would say this one, the offense is more explosive, and I think they can do a little bit more running game versatility, explosive plays, 5 playmakers at all times, the quarterback that can get it to him, when he needs to, and also break the pocket and scramble a little bit and pick up yards there. Especially the past couple of weeks, I'd say the defense, that 2019 team, it was like a historic defense. They were so good, especially up front. We had to prepare against them for 2 weeks, and it was not fun having to watch 2 weeks worth of 49ers film from the whole year. And I think this year the defense not really playing quite as good as that one. And, I think that to me is going to be the key matchup, whether the Chiefs O-line can keep doing what they're doing or whether the 49ers D-line kind of steps up and kind of takes away everything that Kansas City wants to do.
Let's talk about that Chiefs O-line and the Chiefs offense in general, because from an amateur eye, my eye, it doesn't seem like the Chiefs offense is nearly as explosive, yet here they are in the Super Bowl. How is Andy doing it without the same normal cadre of offensive weaponry?
Yeah, they're not as explosive at all. I think you look at the data. I think Pat is averaging the lowest, air yards per attempt. He kind of looks like some of these other guys that throw a lot of short passes because the team just doesn't have the vertical threats, and when they do get open, they don't always capitalize on it. So the offense has had to change into, a little bit more of kind of a horizontal offense, being able to utilize the space created, especially in the run game, some well-timed screens and being able to pick up on some defensive tendencies. And then I think the biggest difference we've seen over the past month is that when the deep shots are there, the Chiefs are finally capitalizing on them. Receiver drops, balls that are in a spot where receivers aren't, those things aren't happening anymore. So, it's a different offense that San Francisco is going to have to face this time. But to your point, Coach Reed, he's adaptable. He figures out, what works for his guys. And the reason it's working, honestly, is the defense. It's because the defense is so good that they're able to win games for the team, and the offense is able to do their part.
That's so interesting because, you hear the average Joe talk about this games, and it's just Mahomes. I can't bet against Mahomes. But you're saying that this group is more driven by its defense.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at the entirety of the season, and the defense played better than the offense. You look at this playoff run, you could probably argue the defense played better as well, especially when you kind of look at the entirety of who you're playing. The Kansas City offense, it's a super cold game against Miami. It's -5 real temp, wind chill of -30. And they're going against the Miami defense that is playing guys they signed that week at defensive end. It was a decimated defense. And so the offense does look good, but maybe adjusted against the talent level of the defense they're playing, not quite as good. Similarly, Buffalo, I felt like was very injured by the time that game rolled around and didn't have their top-tier personnel and what they wanted to be defensively. And you look at the Baltimore game, and it was really 2.5 great drives. They had 2 touchdown drives to start the game, and the entire second half, nothing really happened. A lot of punts and a lot of frustrating football. So, yeah, the offense is doing its part. They're scoring, especially early, to kind of allow the defense to be more aggressive and to, go for fumbles and interceptions and do everything that Spags wants to do blitz-wise. But it's not necessarily a team that is reliant on the offense to win games the way it used to be.
When you look at this offense, particularly the offensive line, going up against a Niner defense that was great early and the last couple of weeks has been maybe a little bit suspect, where do you see the big edge up front when you've got Bosa and Young and you've got Hargrave and Armstead and the front four and two great linebackers? From an offensive lineman standpoint, where do you see vulnerability in this Niner defense up front?
Well, it's a good question. I think, especially over this last month, as you kind of alluded to, I think, Bosa's been playing exceptional football, and I feel like every team offensively goes into a game and says, we have to know where that guy is every snap, and we have to game plan around him. And so he might not be able to get the productivity that he was able to 3 years ago when, the defensive line was a little bit more stacked and game plans weren't maybe specifically designed around picking him out and trying to neuter what he's able to do. And so you look at the other guys, and I think they're the ones that have to step up, especially against the Chiefs interior, which is one of the best ones in football, if not the best. Obviously taking a step back with, Tooney not being able to play, and we'll see if he does. But, defensive line-wise, that interior, if you're able to get a little bit of push on Pat, if you're able to move him off the spot in the pocket, I think that's what you want to attack. And then, you want to combine that with whatever, Bosa and Young are doing on the outside and these edge rushers. If you're giving those guys freelance and you say, Bosa, you're a great player, just rush however you want to, he's reactionary. He's going to go inside if tackles overset. And Jawan Taylor, the right tackle for Kansas City, likes to take deep sets. So if Bosa is trying to take advantage of that, he's going inside, and there's no one left to contain if Pat breaks the pocket. That's not playing good football. They have to be on the same page. So I think, interior-wise, I would imagine the Chiefs are going to try to be physical, make it a tough game for those guys and try to, push the pocket in the pass, and then also try to get that vertical dent in the run game. And I think that's where you can really make some hay.
Mitchell Schwartz is joining us. He was with the Chiefs the last time these two teams played together in the Super Bowl 4 years ago. Longtime offensive lineman for the Chiefs and Browns in the NFL, joining us here on Willard and Dibs. Mitchell, what's your take on all the discussion around Chase Young? At times, not great effort, has all the talent in the world, but it's been a little bit of a topsy-turvy ride since they acquired him from Washington. What kind of player do you think he is?
Well, I think all the ability is there. I think that's why he got drafted as high as he did. He's had some success, and knee injuries especially tend to slow guys down realistically for probably 2 years. It's not just the year you come back that you start to flourish, and there's always kind of that little bit of doubt in your mind, and it's just a little different until you get that full season under your belt, coming off the ACL. So I think all the ability is there, and if you were to look at really any player, you could probably find a couple plays that stand out in terms of effort on the backside of plays, whether that's an offensive tackle on the backside of, a jet sweep the other way or a power play the other way, whether that's, again, a defensive end on a counter, reverse that goes the other way. So it just gets heightened because it's this time of year, because there's only, not two teams left, and you're able to kind of cherry pick some plays. I feel like San Francisco's defensive line is so deep that you can tell those guys, hey, go all out every single play. If you get tired, we'll sub you out and you can get a rest, and we'll get you back in when you're ready to go. And I think that's maybe where the disappointing part is, where, you want those guys flying around at all times, because, on that specific touchdown that we're talking about against Detroit, that could have been the tackle that prevented that. And maybe the game doesn't get, quite so crazy in the first half, and maybe, things don't start to spiral from there. So you want your guys to be given maximum effort. And at this point, it's the Super Bowl. There's only one game left. And so I'd imagine that, he's going to be giving his all, especially on, maybe the backside of some plays where most guys are able to shut it down a little bit and conserve some energy for third down rushes.
Yeah, no sense in shutting it down now when you got 6 months off, either in a win or a loss, in terms of the next real football to play. What was it like 4 years ago in the huddle with Pat Mahomes down 10? Did his demeanor change at all? Did your confidence as a team wane when you guys ultimately came back to beat the Niners?
No, there's no kind of lack of confidence, no kind of wishing things would happen and hoping they would happen. I think there was a, supreme belief that we had the ability to do it. We just had to actually execute and do it. And again, that the onus is on us up front as offensive linemen. I mean, we felt like if we're able to kind of do our part up front, as good as that secondary was, it's really hard to cover for 3 or 4 seconds in the NFL, especially against the receiver and tight end room that we had at the time. So we felt like, we need to do our part up front, give Pat time, give the guys time down the field to get that little extra bit of separation to allow them to get that window. And, obviously the Wasp play has a little bit different connotation in San Francisco land than it does in Kansas City. But the key part of that is Pat asking, do we have time to run Wasp? That means, are the guys going to hold up long enough for me to be able to throw this thing because it's a long route? And so that was, kind of the thing that we had to do up front. And I feel like we did a good enough job and then allowed the skill guys to really shine and to make some plays. So definitely no, kind of confidence loss, just a belief in each other, a belief in ourselves. There isn't really any change in demeanor. And I think maybe that's what separates him from some other guys. It's just always a pure belief in your ability to not only do it, but to actually accomplish the task.
Mitchell, Kyle Shanahan loves to defer, always. You win the toss, you defer. He wants the ball in the second half. Does Andy Reid have a specific philosophy on that?
Same thing. He's a defer guy. I think there was, at some point, a little bit of data showing that you can get that edge when you're able to, score and have the ball at the end of the first half and then get the ball in the second half, and you can put up a, say a 10-point swing in those last 2 minutes and first 5 minutes of the second half. I don't know that it's, quite enough data to, really say one way or another. I know Green Bay kind of went to the playoffs and was enjoying taking the ball first, and they were having success on the first drive. But I always was a nervous and anxious guy, so I love deferring because I wanted to just kind of sit on the bench, let the defense do their thing, let the nerves settle down. I always got really anxious. So if we had the ball first, it's like the nerves would be at their highest point. If I was able to sit on the bench a little, I could kind of let them calm down a bit.
One thing that we've seen from this week in the lead up is Nick Bosa talking about 4 years ago and the fact that Kansas City tends to hold a lot, Mitchell. What did you think of those comments? And do you guys hold more than most teams, Mitchell? You can be honest now.
So the funny thing is, I tweeted this, he's actually right. I mean, the guys do hold. Juwan is the most penalized guy in the NFL this year, and I believe he leads the NFL in holding. Donovan, I think, has led the NFL in holding since he started playing, and I think 2015 it was. Last week, Trey Smith had 2 straight holding calls. I disagreed with one of them pretty strongly, but, Trey had a couple holding calls. And there are, especially from Bosa's perspective, when you're watching the tackles, there are plays where, it looks like the tackles are holding and it doesn't get called. Now, you could probably say that about most guys. I don't know that that's really atypical, but I do think he has a point. And I don't necessarily think that you need to say that. I don't know if it's politicking to kind of alert national media or whatever. We kind of saw that from the Kansas City perspective on the reverse side after the first game of the year, where Chris Collinsworth is highlighting Juwan Taylor, talking about how early he gets off the ball, how deep he is in his stance, and then that kind of becomes a national narrative, and he got maybe over penalized slightly because of that coming out of it. But no, I can guarantee you that holding is not being coached. If you kind of go back to Green Bay in the mid-2000s and 2010s, there was a little bit of a schematic emphasis on an ability to kind of grasp the outside of the shoulder pads and then kind of lock guys down and dance with them. And obviously you guys have had your tussles with Green Bay, and that felt like an operation that, it was almost a technique that was taught, or it was a way of doing it. With Kansas City, I think it's just a couple guys who happen to be a little more prone to it than normal, maybe a little, not quite as good at the lateral agility to not let the guy disengage off his body while he's still got a grasp of the jersey.
All right, so while you're getting all honest with us.
That was a great answer.
It was a great answer. 4 years ago, 3rd and 15, Nick Bosa was held, right?
So I also explained this too. Based on the offensive line view of holding, he was not held. So our understanding of holding is your hands are part of the holding, but the major impact of holding is what your feet are doing. So if your feet are stopped and the guy gets, off of your body and your arm or your grasp of the jersey is what's stopping him from getting where he needs to go, then that's a holding call. If you look at the play, it's Eric Fisher, our left tackle, who was blocking him. His right arm is kind of across Bosa's body because that's the natural position to kind of catch an inside move when a defensive end does that. But Fish runs his feet and accelerates. And if you watch Bosa, his progress has never stopped. He gets pushed inside further than he wants to go, but there's never like a tug on the jersey. There's never a change of momentum or a change in direction because of that specific holding. And so from our offensive line perspective, I know everyone's going to say I'm biased because I was on the team and I think the play is valid, but Fish did a really exceptional job running his feet. He's more athletic than I was. I wouldn't have been able to do that. I probably would have got a holding against Bosa. But from the offensive line perspective, we don't see that as a holding, and obviously the officials didn't see it either. Isn't
it true, Mitchell, that Fisher held him so long he was forced to buy him dinner after the game?
That's I haven't heard that one.
I might have just made it up.
A little bit in enemy territory now, so that's a new one.
No, you're home. You're a Santa Rosa guy. The 707. Your family. Your family. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the offensive line perspective. What's the defensive line perspective, Mitchell?
I mean, the defensive line perspective, they're going to say, his arm was across my chest and he didn't let me go where I wanted to go.
Right.
And I would say, you got to do something about that. The guy's running his feet. This is not what a holding call is in the NFL. If that was the case, there would be a holding call on most plays. Again, does the defensive lineman get kind of outside the cylinder of the offensive line's hips and feet, and then does his movement get restricted because there's an arm that's grasped onto something or that's impeding his progress? And I'd say, no, that's not the case. So, yeah, it sucks, and I understand some visuals and especially some screenshots, a lot of which were sent my way back then and more recently when I talked about it. But that's just not really what holding is in the NFL. And, it's unfortunate that it went against them, but I'm lucky that it did not go against us.
Yes, and Mitchell Schwartz, who was with the Chiefs 4 years ago, with us here on Willard and Dibs. Hey, what do we not know about being a teammate with Mahomes?
Well, I think the thing that we're maybe seeing now is just how competitive he is. I think that there's maybe a misconception of what competitive nature looks like, and we think of guys like Jordan and kind of meaner guys who are unpleasant to be around all the time and who are not so nice teammates to try to get the best out of everybody. And I think Pat has the same competitive drive, the same fire, the same want to in terms of showing people that they're wrong and proving how good he is. But he's such a good-natured guy. He's such a great teammate. That's the thing that maybe gets lost in the picture of who he is as a player. So I think it's great that we're getting to see that. He's awesome, man. He treats everyone in the locker room great. Whether you're a guy just signed a few days ago, whether you're a guy that's been there the whole time with him, he likes to chat sports with everybody. He seems to know everything that's going on in the sporting world, all sports. So he's a really fun guy to be around, and likes to keep it loose and keep it easy, and just a great dude.
We all like tight ends who catch passes, but you like tight ends who also block, right?
I do. I know where you're going with this, but you can continue.
No, what do you...
Guy's Cal-educated. You can't sneak one by him.
No, what do you think? How do you compare Kittle and Kelsey?
I would compare them in the manner that, for what football has been over the last decade, and when Travis has been as dominant as he has, the passing game has been, I would say, more important than the run game. And we're seeing that trend. We're seeing that with the 49ers wanting to go up in the draft and get a guy who can kind of change what they're doing offensively in the pass game, finding a guy in Purdy who can unlock more than Jimmy was able to in the pass game. With how important the pass game is, I would prioritize a tight end that can thrive in that. And I think Travis has shown that he's the best pass-catching tight end of all time. He is obviously not the blocker Kittle is, especially with kind of the pure physicality and the relentlessness that Kittle likes to block with. But he does his part in the run game. It might not look as tenacious, it might not look as pretty at times, but he is a capable blocker. He is asked to do a lot of similar things to what Kittle is, and maybe doesn't do it at, again, quite the same level or quite the same ferocity, but it gets back to, is it more important to be really good at two things which don't have equal weight, or is it more important to be the best who has ever done it at the more valuable thing and not quite as good, less valuable thing? And, I think that's maybe the better way to frame the conversation.
Mitchell, who do you think's winning the game?
You guys obviously aren't going to believe it, but I tend to be a little pessimistic about Kansas City. I don't know why. I've just kind of always been that way. I thought it was going to be a huge challenge to beat Baltimore, and I was kind of proved wrong there. The way it's looked the past month, I'm got to go Kansas City. I just think San Francisco's defense isn't playing quite as well. The defensive line's not playing quite as well. The tackling hasn't been there up to San Francisco standards. And you look at the Chiefs' offense, and the offensive line's been playing great. Guys are doing their part on the back end at the receiver room. They're holding onto the ball. They're making guys miss in the short game, the screen game. And so I think that advantage is in Kansas City's favor, along with, it's been talked about all week. San Francisco's got a little bit more of a static defense, and so they're either going to have to do stuff that they're not as used to doing to try to mix it up and quote-unquote confuse Pat and confuse the offense, or they're just going to be a little bit more static. And I can guarantee you with 2 weeks to prepare, you're not going to want to be that against Coach Reed. So they're going to have to maybe do some different things that they don't do quite as much and in different spots than they're used to. And then the other side of the ball, I think that's just going to be a heavyweight battle. I mean, good on good, physical on physical. It's going to be a really fun matchup. And so I just think that's going to be a bit of a wash in terms of both sides making plays and doing their parts. I just feel like the Kansas City offense, as of right now, has the advantage over the San Francisco defense, and that's what I think tips it.
Okay. Those are fair answers, man. You're a good sport.
Yeah, well-reasoned, too.
Thanks for hopping on.
Well, I knew I had to be, so thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.